Han Solo's famous DL44 blaster first appeared in the original Star Wars in the hands of everyone's favorite scoundrel turned freedom fighter. It quickly cemented itself in the minds of early Star Wars fans and has become one of the most iconic weapons in film. In today's video, we'll go over everything there is to know about Han Solo's classic DL44, both inside and outside of the Star Wars universe. The first time we see the DL44 is in the timeless cantina scene where Han Solo blasts Greedo in the middle of their famous confrontation. From that point on, Han and his blaster will be almost one and the same, and is inseparable from the character himself. The DL44 was given to Han by his shady mentor Tobias Beckett around 13 years before A New Hope. At this time it included multiple different attachments like a stock and an extended barrel. But Han likes to stay up on his feet and on the move, so we never see him use either of these on screen. The blaster traveled with Han for over 30 years until his death. The DL44 model of blasters was produced by Blastech Industries. Blastech is one of the premier arms manufacturers in the galaxy, also manufacturing other iconic blasters like the A280 rifle series used by the Rebel Alliance, and the E11 used by the Galactic Empire. The DL44 is classified as a heavy blaster, meaning it has a much higher damage threshold than smaller, lighter blasters like the Twi'lek Blurrg or the Naboo EGL-3A. The primary difference between a light blaster like the two previously mentioned and the DL44 is the ratio of rate of fire to damage. Lighter blasters use a rate of fire to make up for the user's lack of precision. The price of light blasters' high rate of fire is lower damage. Heavy blasters can be extremely deadly if the user can reliably land their shots, like everyone's favorite scruffy nerf herder. Like most blasters in this era of Star Wars, the DL44 has a massive internal ammunition supply. Instead of worrying about reloading, the user must carefully manage the heat generated by each shot, lest the weapon overheat and cause a malfunction that could cost you your life. However, with skill, good timing, and a little luck, the heat sink can be discharged in one blast, exponentially increasing the blaster's rate of fire for a short time. The only real limiting factor of the DL44 isn't in the blaster itself, it's the user's skill. The real-life firearm the DL44 was based off of is the Mauser C96, standing for Construction Model of 1896. The Mauser Company is one of the most famous arms manufacturers in the world, having produced some of the most widely recognized weapons in world history, with many of their other various inventions also appearing in Star Wars. The Mauser Company was founded by Paul Mauser, who was born on June 27, 1838 in Württemberg, a large territory in the southwest of Germany. The Mauser Company operated from the 1870s until 1945. The C96 was designed by Mauser engineers in the 1890s and completed in 1896. Official versions were manufactured until 1937, however hundreds of thousands of unofficial copies were made for decades in the future. The broom-handle Mauser, as it came to be known, was one of the widest adopted firearms of its time, with official contracted copies made for Germany, Austria, Turkey, Bolivia, Brazil, Finland, Italy, Malaysia, Poland, Lithuania, Mexico, China, Spain, the Soviet Union, Thailand, England, and multiple police departments in the United States. It's safe to say there probably isn't a country on Earth where a few of these things aren't floating around. You may be asking yourself, why was this gun in particular so successful? The C96 was the first practical semi-automatic pistol ever made. While there were many others at the time, the C96 was the cheapest to produce and most reliable of the bunch. Most countries in the early 20th century still issued 6-shot revolvers. Some still required manual operation between each shot, were cumbersome to reload, and had a very limited rate of fire. In contrast, the basic version of the Mauser had a 10-round capacity, with later versions like the Trench and Scout carbine variants having up to 40-round detachable box magazines. The C96 came in all sorts of different shapes and sizes. Many versions had extended barrels, wooden foregrips, stocks, and scopes that allowed them to be used more like rifles instead of pistols. Other versions were made with medium-length barrels, stocks, and select fire, so the user could fire in full auto if they chose. These versions were extremely sought after by soldiers assaulting cramped trenches, who were issued unwieldy single-shot 4-foot-long rifles popular at the time. The C96 was truly the most versatile firearm of its age. I have no doubt this ruggedness and adaptability influenced its choice as the trusty sidearm for a fast-talking galactic smuggler. The C96 continued to see frequent use after the First World War. often appearing as officer sidearms during the Second World War, Korea, Vietnam, and the Chinese Revolution. Before being featured in A New Hope, the Mauser C-96 already had a full history outside of the trenches. During the Boer Wars in South Africa, Winston Churchill, future Prime Minister of the British Empire, used one in combat. T.E. Lawrence, better known as Lawrence of Arabia, used one during his campaign in the Middle East during the First World War. It has also been used in over a half dozen major assassinations in history, the most notable being the murder of Tsar Nicholas and the Russian royal family during the Communist Revolution in 1918. There are two distinct ideas behind the art style choice for props in the making of the original Star Wars. Some people say the choice to use existing weapons instead of making new ones from scratch was simply an economic one. Production for A New Hope began in 1975. War movies were the rage of Hollywood. The props market was flooded with cheap and easily accessible prop guns that would save the production crew large amounts of time and money. The second idea proposed that it was a conscious decision, that George Lucas specifically wanted the movie to have a grounded feel instead of using goofy laser guns popular in sci-fi at the time. My guess is it's a mixture of both. Star Wars took a completely different approach from the shiny, spotless futures shown in Flash Gordon and Star Trek, instead opting for a gritty, lived-in feel. Movies set in the First and Second World War had a tremendous impact on Lucas, and this inspiration is seen in many other places in Star Wars. The trench run scene is a near shot-for-shot remake of the climax of a film about a squadron of English bombers sent to destroy a dam in Germany. It seems unlikely to me that this influence suddenly stopped at the choice of weapon design. Most likely the monetary and practical benefits of using existing weapons was just a happy little accident, one which allowed the great diversity of weapons we see in A New Hope. The original on-screen DL44 prop was designed by Bapty & Co. in the United Kingdom, where much of Star Wars was filmed. Except the desert parts, there aren't many deserts in England. Bapty was founded in 1919 and is still the #1 supplier of prop weapons in Europe. Bapty produced all the blaster props used in A New Hope and The Empire Strikes Back. That design team left a significant imprint on Star Wars. They've also produced many other widely recognizable props in film, such as Sean Connery's Walther PPK seen in the early James Bond films. Obviously, there are substantial differences between the factory-issue C-96 and the DL44. The flash hider on the barrel was chopped off the end of another Mauser creation, the MG-81. The MG-81 was the aircraft version of the German standard-issue MG-34 and was mounted on the sides of bombers. The MG-81 is pretty awesome in its own right, coming in single, double, and even triple barrel configurations. The DL44's heatsink, located below the barrel in the C-96's magazine well, comes from the engine of a model aircraft. The rounded part is made of an aluminum combustion cylinder, and the grooves are engine pistons welded together. The scope mounted on the side of the DL44 is not the scope that was often used on Scout C-96 models. This scope is a Hensoldt Wetzlar 3x magnification sniper scope, usually found on Kar-98s being used as marksman rifles. The combination of these fairly unrelated items produced one of the most iconic pieces in film history. Over the last 120 years, the C-96 became a famous and infamous firearm used by millions of people across dozens of conflicts. It was perhaps the most prolific weapon of its time. However, the DL44 truly elevated it to an immortal status, seen by the hundreds of millions of Star Wars fans across the world. Not only did the Mauser C-96 participate in events that forever changed human history in its own time, it managed to weave itself into the center of a world-renowned classic that will be enjoyed for generations to come. No other singular firearm can claim this level of fame after over 100 years of usage. Those Mauser engineers could never imagine the fruits of their labor traveling not only across the entire world, but also to a galaxy far, far away.